Hello, I'm Jonothan Earnshaw, former Editor-in-Chief of BJS and currently Director of the BJS Academy. I'm here with Des Winter, who's the current Editor-in-Chief of BJS. And our job today is to tell you what it's like to be the BJS Editor-in-Chief, what it's like to look after a major surgical journal. So first of all, let's start, Des. Tell us a little bit about your background in surgical publishing and journal editing and how you came to be Editor-in-Chief.
Yeah, wow. I got involved in academics at probably quite an early age. I probably got involved in the concept of postgraduate journals, even as a medical student. And all the way through my postgraduate training, I had not one, not two, but 5 subscriptions to all of the major surgical journals, including BJS. And I hoovered them up and I looked forward to them. In each edition, as I would have enjoyed comics as a young lad. Of course, that's something slightly out of date now for many people to try to understand that as a concept, but this was how we got information before the internet. And if you go back to even the early days of the internet, it wasn't that easy to get onto public libraries, which were free for free information. So this was exciting times of libraries and books and things that would be delivered to your door. And of course, I guess I was hooked, and that was infectious for me. I never really actually believed or thought that I would get involved on the other side. But when I did get to a point of some degree of maturity and being asked to be a referee, when I was doing referee reports, I was doing 3 or 4 pages, A4 pages of reports, and I didn't realize that was not what was normal. And I suppose I was demonstrating even then that I had perhaps more than a passing interest and more than a passing aptitude, I hope. I guess you just get, you're sort of sucked into this, and then one becomes what it is that you hope that you would become. And that is someone who is a facilitator and someone who can, take an idea, take a concept, take writing, and actually, learn to make it better. There are writers and then there are editors, and of course they're not quite the same. What do you think yourself? Do you think one can be an excellent editor and not necessarily academic, or is the academic a requirement? Or I personally don't think so. I think there are fantastic editors and fantastic academics. The two don't always cross. What do you think?
So, well, I'm not an academic. I've never pretended to be. But interestingly, like you, I was hooked on surgery as a medical student, and I started a subscription to BJS in 1980, which was my second year after qualifying. So I always knew I wanted to be a surgeon, but I didn't know I wanted to be an editor. And the editing came from my interest in acute leg ischemia. I did a thesis on acute leg ischemia and wrote it up. And I wrote a review paper for BJS. And it was edited by John Farnham with his red pen extensively. And I suddenly realized that there was a pattern to his editing. And all it was knowing what the rules were. And you could edit something into something that was easier to read and communicated the message better. So that's what got me interested. And I said to him, if ever something comes up at BJS, bear me in mind. And a couple of years later, 1994, I'd just become a consultant. They said there was a post, and I've been here ever since. And I've loved it. I think it's part of the blood now of editing and looking at manuscripts and helping people to publish their own work. I think that's eventually what the important thing is.
Oh, definitely. So,
both of us have now been editor-in-chief. How did you come to be editor-in-chief? What was the process?
I started off editing for other journals as if you like an associate editor, where you work hard and you often work in the somewhat periphery of a journal in terms of what happens. One hopes then that you get better at it, you get a little more mature at it, and then an opportunity arises and you get to meet the people in the BJS team, and then you work out with each other whether or not that's something that's going to fit or not, whether or not you fit in terms of your capacity, ability, availability, affability, ability to work inside a team, etc., etc. I think that worked, and I think John Bynon and I were at the time the people who handled some of the lower GI stuff for that work, and we worked well together. I think not that anyone, you could not work well with John Bynon. What a wonderful character he was, and a fantastic editor. And I miss him still to this day. But his successor, Martin Evans, is doing a fantastic job, and is just exactly as good a ballasting and balancing lower GI guy that John Bynon was. Then I suppose as the years went on, one becomes one of the more mature people sitting around the table, and you start actually having to think about succession planning and having to think about things in terms of team and team building, and also legacy planning. What it is that you would want the place to look like when you finish after a few years. So I suppose there was an inevitability to that one of us who was more mature was going to be in that position. And frankly, I think the music stopped and I was the only one not sitting on a chair, if you're familiar with the game. And therefore one gets, if you like, anointed or appointed to something, and you find yourself sitting then on that chair thinking, oh God, this is a big responsibility. I don't know if I necessarily want this. I think a lot of people would imagine that there's a huge amount of cachet and kudos that comes with it. I think there is a lot of responsibility, a lot of challenges and difficulties that if you let them could be extreme pressure. How did you cope with that sort of challenge and difficulty and pressure on you of the enormity of the task of not making this a car crash or messing it up?
So, like you, I think I took over from a very stable situation, and I'd been on the editorial team since 1994. And then when John Murray retired, like you, we were the sort of the last men standing on the deck. And Derek Alderson and I had been there the longest, and we made a proposal that the two of us should be joint editors in chief. And frankly, that worked really well because you always had someone to bounce things off. And our interests were a little different. I loved the patterns of the journal. I loved putting articles together, making a story. I loved bringing articles together. I loved the extra issues, the annual special issues, and really concentrating on the research. And Derek did a lot of the strategy and a lot of managing the executive and dealing with all the other groups, the boards, and the council of the BJS who looked after the journal. So that was brilliant for me. And I found it much trickier when he left to manage BJS Open and I was left on my own for 5 years. Although, as you say, the other editors are very mature. We'd all been together for a very long time. So that part of it I found fairly straightforward. But how about you? The role of the editor, of course, is to manage down, to manage your colleagues, but also to manage up, to manage the executive and the strategic part of the journal. How do you find that?
Well, the first part is easy. I mean, you're working with a bunch of editors who are absolutely fantastic. I mean, they've been selected, some of whom by our forebearers, and some of whom we have taken on as time goes on, but they're all absolutely magnificent. I mean, to me, I think of it as being a trainer of rare racing horses who are so wonderfully talented. They don't need to be asked to do what they do; they're born to do it. And really, all you ever have to do is just gently shape the overall mold or direction in which the group are going, according to a number of factors, including the space in the journal, etc. The number of responsibilities, I think, as an editor-in-chief include how much can you actually publish. If you, in an ideal world, of course, we'd love to publish everything, but we can't. And of course, we'd only like to take the good things, but then how do you know what's the good thing? And so spotting the good thing becomes a challenge. You can't do it all yourself. You have to work with the team. You have to encourage the team to be able to do that. But at the same time, not to take too much. It's difficult to exclude some of the more personal aspects of these things and I'd like to take that, I'd like to take that, I like the flavor of this, I like the taste of that. One of the papers I got teased about most of all, I remember in my early years, was something just close to my heart. It wasn't that I knew the people involved, but it related to the idea of mechanically altering a tumor with a stent that, of course, now you would use in endovascular, but in those days was the relatively early days of using them for obstructing gastrointestinal cancers, and showing that that had a molecular consequence in terms of bloodstream cancer, or at least some aspects of shed, debris, or something from cancer cells. And that was, okay, it may not have been something which was extremely high tech or high performance, but it was what I like to think is hypothesis generating. So there's a good example of something I think if one of the young people now had taken, I may tease them furiously, but I would like to hope that they had a good reason for it and that perhaps they're seeing something that I don't. So that's easy. Managing the team, I think, is very simple. Managing how we go in a direction with the publisher and all the rest, I think I've had a pretty easy run of it. We've had a very good transition from one to the other. It's never easy when you change publisher, as you know. So there's been a number of challenges and problems, but I guess that's what we do as surgeons, isn't it? Fix the problems and fix the challenges. Dealing with the executive, I have to say, has not been in any way a difficulty. It's been a pleasure for the most part because they are a good crew and they work tremendously well. I think Anders is managing it as a chairman terrifically well. And I could not ask for more from a secretary like Julia Mayol, from a treasurer like Steve Wigmore, and then of course the rest of the executive, including yourself, our colleague Vinay Salaman from BJS Open, and all the rest, and Nicola Di Martino, and of course Derek Alderson. I mean, it really is a very straightforward, straight shooting, intelligent team who have a good sense. And I think the obvious answer is, of course, tell them what you plan to do. You have an explanatory introduction as to the direction in which you would like to go, and you invite some aspects and listen to what it is that they have to say. Because if you can't listen to, several hundred years worth of experience in a room, then you're kind of a bit dumber. As my father used to say, if you are a smart guy and you're sitting in a room full of smart people and you think you're the smartest, then you're the stupidest. There's always smarter people. Learn to listen and shut the hell up. As you can see, I didn't listen to that advice.
No, clearly. So, you've talked about all the good things about being editor-in-chief, yeah, but there must be some bad things too. I was thinking back on the things that challenged me. I remember managing things like misconduct was always tricky, treading the tightrope. Have you had to do that, or are there other things that keep you awake at night?
Oh, goodness, yes, absolutely. And not only that, I've had to deal with upset, junior colleagues who've been harassed or have had, individualized public admonishment from authors. That can be challenging and difficult. That's never easy. It can be difficult when trying to deal with that because you have neither stick nor carrot to deal with people who have offended in that sense. I recall at the time, of course, and it echoes exactly what I'm saying. And I'm conscious this doesn't sound like an echo chamber of compliments, but I got on to you, I remember at the time, and said, having a challenge like that, what do you think I should do? He said, very simple. Ignore the bad guy and give the good guy a hug and say, relax, don't worry about it. And you're so right. There are aspects of this that you just don't need. And if I was giving advice to anyone coming after me, if I drop dead right now, it is be calm, be cool, take the job as seriously as it should, but it is just a post and a job. Don't take yourself seriously either. Ask for advice, use the team. I think one of the greatest challenges we're meeting at the moment is the influx and sheer overwhelming demand on our time from what looks very much to me like artificial intelligence utilized, if not artificial intelligence actually authored junk that's coming in, particularly in the correspondence section. I only just today had to get onto the team to warn them of a particular person in a particular part of the world who I'm not sure even exists, but we are getting almost the same correspondence letter on almost every single article. And having to cope with that demand is quite overwhelming, actually. Reminds me of the film The Matrix, Humans are being overcome somewhat by the speed and persistence of machine-generated things. So that's one of the things that's coming up. Plagiarization.
I'm glad I missed out on AI. I'm very glad.
Plagiarization, do you remember the pain that we've had? And I have it now constantly as well. The pain.
So it used to worry me. It used to worry me because I remember thinking that some of these people, you have to understand why plagiarism occurs. And I don't know whether you remember the chap that took a paper that had been published and obviously didn't speak English very well. So he just inserted his own data from his own study into someone else's paper and sold it as a new paper. And you could understand why that happened. But of course you couldn't allow it. And it is very interesting how often BJS and BJS Open editors pick up on plagiarism. And I also wonder sometimes when you do find plagiarism and you report it to the author's institution and you don't know that country and you don't know their system, what happens to the guy? What does the university do to the person who's actually done the plagiarism? What actually happens to them? I must say it always worried me, even though you do have to play it very straight and be severe to make sure it doesn't happen. But I don't envy you in the AI world.
No, and it's getting increasingly challenging. So we've had to up our game to compensate against that, just as anyone who works in the world of finance understands that you have to increasingly deal with higher levels of security threats. So we're up for that. We knew it was coming. We were ready for it. We're prepared for that. It's sometimes the unprepared for threat, of course, is the much greater one, the one that you just don't see coming. I mean, the pandemic we did not see coming. We didn't. None of us was a challenge. I like to think that because we had more time on our hands, and I mean we, I don't mean BJS, and I don't mean the people in the BJS, I mean we collectively as surgeons, I think it gave us a little bit of time to behave and act a bit more like physicians. We had time because we weren't operating electively as much as we normally would have done. We had a lot more time to read papers, a lot more time to collectively focus on a specific disease problem, like what do we do in a pandemic situation? As a result, there was a big influx of pretty good papers for the most part, and an awful lot of very, very, very good collaborative work. And if you think about how cohesively surgeons worked at that time on one particular problem, I think we should be tremendously proud of that. I think we put the physicians to shame in comparison, because they collectively do that routinely and they have the money and funding and all the rest. I think surgeons in this showed that they're well able to behave exactly as a functioning syncytium, or as one of those lovely flock of starlings that you see. They moved exactly in unison. And I think that was a tremendously exciting time period. We upped our game. We increased the speed of publication, the number of papers and things that we got out there. We increased the capacity of the journal by increasing the type of papers that we did, like research letters, etc. And I think that strategy has probably worked out very well, because we were able to get things out faster. We were able to change the dynamic and perhaps the tempo of the journal. I hope that is a trajectory that we'll be able to continue. And I think it came perfectly at a time we were about to launch the concepts of Young BJS, and the BJS Academy as a free online educational content is wonderful. I mean, it's to me, the first of its kind in the world, where it's not single dimension. It's not just a video. It's not just audio. It's not just text and file. It is a functioning aspect of all of those. It's like a living, breathing organism that will live long after I'm gone and long after you're gone. And how exciting is that? But
there have been extraordinary changes during our time as editors. I mean, if you just think back, the type of paper that we used to publish 20, 25 years ago in BJS, retrospective reviews, you don't see any of that stuff anymore. The professionalization of surgical research has changed dramatically, and the papers that are published, the collaborative work across institutions, across countries is extraordinary. And the speed of publication, I don't know whether you're old enough to remember, we used to get BJS papers once a week in a bag. And everything used to be done on paper, and the stuff that was published in this month's BJS was last year's research, because it took so long to get through the journal. And now, you're publishing stuff instantly, and instead of waiting for an issue, it goes online straight away. There's virtually no delay for this sort of stuff. And as you say, the extraordinary use of the digital revolution. So you just don't have to publish papers, you don't have to publish written material, you can enhance it with podcasts and videos. And that, of course, that's where I'm very proud to lead the BJS Academy, because that's what it's for. The BJS Academy is designed specifically to be an educational resource to add value to the journals by including extra material, discussion, blogging about the material that's there. So it's a natural progress of how surgical research has gone, how surgical publishing has gone. And these are fascinating times. And you must have noticed changes even in your time as editor-in-chief.
Oh, goodness, yeah, we have, my goodness, a lot has changed. I mean, we used to talk about it, that sort of digital revolution of when that was going to happen and when there was going to be a larger amount of open access publishing. So there is an inevitability to this. I do see that is the direction of traffic, that there will be more open access. There will be more and more free content. For people reading, they don't care how it is, whether or not it was paid for or not paid for. What they care about is that it's free for them to read. And that's what we've got to follow. We've got to follow the idea of people paying a lot less for music, a lot less for news, a lot less for their audiovisual entertainment. And that also has now extended in. So ultimately, how it's paid and how that's commoditized, if you like, has represented a major challenge for us and remains a challenge for us going into the future, because whether or not people hate or love the concept, we do require there to be someone who actually puts this together as a publisher. And in order to do that, that does require human errors in addition to costs that are non-human. And where that's the case, we do need to monetize that somehow. And that's one of the hardest jobs, I think, of the editor-in-chief, is actually balancing that. Of course, I would dearly love to be in a position where we were making millions. And that, of course, is the perception out there, such that we could pay referees. But the reality is we don't. And the reality is that doesn't exist. I think BJS is in a very nice position as a large charitable society to be able to look after an aspect of that. And that's one of the things that we're looking on, is the capacity to be able to say to people as referees, thank you very much for your time. Although we can't afford to pay you, we can make a charitable donation on your behalf, and it will go into one of the following channels. These are the type of things that we're working on in terms of looking after people. And then in terms of the changes that have come, my goodness, we've changed the dynamic of the journal tremendously in anticipation of it going paperless, which I'm happy to say it is now paperless as of this year. One of the things that I think is kind of cool, that has really sort of taken on an aspect, is things like the instrumentalist type of artist, type of article. The instrumentalist being something about the history of a particular instrument. I'm particularly grateful to the two people who really energized that would be Rob Barboza, and many of you follow him on Twitter, where he was very active on that. And then also Mike Crippen, who is in the College of Surgeons in England. And of course, there'll be many more, and there will be many more who will take that up. Things like that, and debates, etc., which are a lot more dynamic and interactive. We've started doing shortcut video abstracts. Things like that are going to be pretty sexy and cool, I think, for people to download in short snippets in videos. I think that's probably the bite size, and that's BYTE, the bite size of information that people wish to have in a modern world. I think most people will not read a full paper, and we just have to accept that that is the case. So where that is the case, I think us as editors spending a huge amount of time on technical editing and less time on digital historically was correct. Nowadays, we need to focus just that little bit more on the digitization, the dissemination of that information. And as you know, we now have a wonderful package to give to people doing randomized controlled trials and things, where we can offer them a rapidity of publication, excellence of editing, excellence of production, technical editing, typesetting, all of that, no problem at all. But in addition to that, all of the cool aspects that go with the BJS Academy and the digital universe that you all inhabit. And I think actually that's going to be our future.
I agree. That's kind of the point, isn't it? And the surgical journals, I mean, they used to be paid for by individual subscribers, and they'd come through the letterbox once a month. And that's all changed. People aren't going to want to subscribe anymore. But however, if you can create communities of like-minded people who want to be a part of your BJS society activities, be they journals, be they the academy, all the digital revolution. If you can get subscribers, just like Spotify or anything else, then you can, as you say, monetize. You can actually afford to offer the sort of charitable things that we do and the high quality educational resource of the academy, which is presently free for anybody to enjoy anywhere in the world. So there is a way of doing this, but as I say, it does require us to create communities amongst our surgical colleagues and surgical researchers.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's, I have always liked that. I've always liked Julio Mayol's idea of that is that that's what we actually are. We are an ecosystem, if you like. That the more people that you interact with, the better. Some of the more really special people who are very, very close to me in my personal life would talk about that, saying that the more people that you interact with, the more people who you're exposed to, well, goodness, isn't that better? The other side to that, of course, is the sort of academic side. I don't know who it was. Was it Feynman who said that? Who said that the more proportionately your knowledge and intellectual bubble increases, the larger the surface area with which you do not know increases. So the more you know, the less you know, which of course is true. And the more that one wants to know and therefore needs to know. And please, to the universe, to all of you out there listening, come to us, get involved. We need more people, we need more energy, we need more drive, we need more of that digital interfacing. We need intellectual and, of course, language interfacing with other things in order to translate what it is that we do. And we are very keen to get involved in making those connections and making those connections between people, and in particular transcontinental and global and around the world. Are we looking to be the only or monopoly? Or no, goodness no. Is this the purpose of this purely to facilitate something monetary? Oh God, no. No, all we want is a big global community that is thinking, breathing, surgical research. I really hope I have embodied everything that has come before me and everything that there is in existence with the current group. And I have absolutely no doubt that in a very short space of time, when I complete my time, that I'll be passing it on to people or a person or persons who will be doing a fantastic job to bring us on an even bigger step as I step back a little bit and let others at it. But until then, I think Jonathan and I in particular have lived through a magical time.
It has, and that's a great place to end. Being an editor-in-chief is more than just editing manuscripts.
For sure.
It's a lifestyle choice, and I think both of us have espoused it and love it very much. And
very much.
Thank you very much for, if you've managed to make it to the end of here, thank you very much for listening, and good night.
Good night.